Dork in Disguise, Chapter 8. Mr. Hooten walked into the classroom and took something out of his pocket. He pushed his thumb into the end of it, and a loud shriek blasted from it. Jerry jumped into his seat, several people screamed, and everyone covered their ears. Mr. Hooten grinned and turned off the noise. "Gets your attention, doesn't it?" "Geez, Mr. Hooten," either Kim or Cat Henley said several rows back. "Give us a warning, will you, before you ruin our eardrums?" "What was that?" asked her sister. "It's a stimulus," said Mr. Hooten. "We're going to be talking about stimuli. Actually, this particular stimulus is called a shrieker. You can carry it with you. If you are attacked, you can just push this button. Why do you think this works?" Brenda raised her hand. "It draws attention." "It sure does," Mr. Hooten said. He held up the small device. A stimulus is any change in the environment around an organism that produces a response. What's your response? "We jumped," Jerry said. "About a foot in the air," Mr. Hooten said, grinning. "You should have seen it. You all looked pretty funny. But you're right. A response is an action." He looked around the room. "What would be another example of a stimulus?" "The smell of popcorn when I walk into a movie theater," Cat Henley said. "My response is that my mouth waters." "Terrific," Mr. Hooten said. "Someone give me another example." "Sunlight is a stimulus," Chad Newsom said. "Explain," responded Mr. Hooten. "Plants grow towards the sun." "Excellent. Another stimulus," Jerry thought, "is Cinnamon O'Brien. She makes my heart pound hard." Jerry thought again how glad he was that Cinnamon, Gabe, and Craig weren't in Mr. Hooten's class. It would have been awfully hard to pretend that he wasn't interested in science. He wasn't sure about Tony, who was in his class. He didn't know if Tony would report back to the others. Tony was pretty quiet, though, so maybe Jerry wouldn't have to worry about it. After class, Mr. Hooten asked Jerry to stay behind for a minute. Jerry had said, after the rest of the students had left, "I've had a look at your records from your previous school. Miss Robertson and I are coaches for the 6th grade science team. We'd like you to consider joining." "What is it?" "We study different aspects of science, quiz one another, and compete as a team against other schools. Our first competition will be held in a few weeks, so we have to get started. It's a lot of fun." "Who else is on it?" Jerry asked. "So far, just the Henley sisters." Of course, Jerry thought. Brenda had said they were very smart. Besides, they were each about as dorky as a person can get. "It takes one to know one." "I'm going to ask Brenda McAdams to join the team," Mr. Hooten said, "and we'll ask Chad Newsom too, and a few other good students." He paused a moment, then said, "You don't need to give me an answer now, but think about it. You'd be an asset to the team, and you'd like it. We have a good time." "I'll think about it," Jerry said. Mr. Hooten nodded and smiled. "See you tomorrow." Out in the hall, the Henley sisters were waiting. Kim asked, "Are you going to join the science team?" Mr. Hooten said he would ask you. "We're going to have such a great time." Kat came up behind her sister. "We'll cut those other teams down to size, won't we, Jerry?" "We don't even know yet whether he's going to join," Kim said to Kat. "Why wouldn't he join?" Kat asked. "How should I know?" Kim said. "Why don't you ask him? He's standing right there in front of you." "Why wouldn't you join?" Kat asked him. I'm not sure, Jerry said. "I'm thinking about it." "Chad's joining," Kim said. "Oh," Jerry said. "Good. Well, see ya." He hurried down the hall before either sister could say any more. He needed time to think. He walked down the hall mulling over his problem. He really wanted to be on the science team, but could he be on the team and still put off his cool disguise? It would be very dangerous. Jerry felt as if he were skating on thin ice, and if he made one false move, he'd go plunging into icy waters while the cool kids laughed at him from the shore. But he wouldn't think about it that now. After all, Cinnamon O'Brien seemed to like him. What more could a guy ask for? He decided as he headed down the hall that it was awfully risky to join the science team. Maybe he'd better not try it. He didn't want anything to jeopardize his chances with Cinnamon. "Hi, Brenda." "Hi." Jerry hadn't been able to talk to her for the rest of the afternoon. She had arrived at their classes just before the bell had hurried out with other friends before he could speak to her. He couldn't wait to tell her about his great conversation with Cinnamon. Finally, after school, he had found her at her locker. Brenda pulled out 2 notebooks and a science book. "You going home now?" Jerry had to talk loud over the banging lockers and yelling kids in the hall. "Yep. I'll walk with you part way." "Okay, sure. I want to tell you about the great conversation I had with Cinnamon today." Brenda closed her locker and turned to Jerry. "Oh, sure. Congratulations." "Thanks. I'm going to try to write a song for her." "You think she'd like that?" "Yeah, why wouldn't she?" "Hey, thanks for suggesting that I be nice to her," Jerry grinned. "I don't know why I didn't think of it." Brenda laughed. "Yeah, being nice. What a concept, right? Hey, I've got to go. I'm meeting Aubrey at my house after her flute lesson. We're going to listen to some CDs. Disappointment flickered through Jerry and settled into his chest. He hoped that Brenda would be more excited about his success with Cinnamon. He had wanted her to ask him to recount the conversation word for word. He had hoped she'd celebrate his victory with him. After all, she was his coach, the one who gave him such great advice. "Could you wait for me?" Jerry asked. "I have to stop at my locker first." "Well, okay, sure. Wait by the oak tree, okay?" Jerry said. "I'll be right there." Jerry hurried to his locker, grabbed what he needed, and went outside. Brenda wasn't standing by the tree. Jerry squinted and looked around, but he didn't see her. "Hey, Flack!" Jerry turned to see Gabe right behind him. "I thought you were sick," Jerry said. "School's out," Gabe said, grinning, "so I'm suddenly feeling better." Jerry thought he had a lot of nerve showing up after school after being gone all day. What if a teacher saw him? "Have you seen Cinnamon?" Gabe asked. Jerry's heart stopped. "No, not since school got out." "Hey, Gabe! Jerry!" Jerry squinted and saw blurry Cinnamon and fuzzy Robin gesturing to them at the corner of the building. "Come on," Gabe said. Jerry followed him. "Where are we going?" He looked around, searching for Brenda. Where was she, anyway? On the sidewalk at the top of the steep slope that led down the playing field, a group of kids had gathered. Cinnamon, Robin, Tony, Carrie, Craig, and several others were talking and laughing. "Have you ever skated down this hill, Gabe?" Robin asked. "Not yet," Gabe answered. Cinnamon was smiling at Gabe, so Jerry jumped in to get her attention. "It would be really awesome to rollerblade down that hill." Gabe turned to Jerry. "So why don't you do it?" "Me?" Jerry gulped. "Great idea, Flack," Craig said. I've been waiting to see you skate." Everyone looked at Jerry. I don't have my skates," he stammered. Out the corner of his eye, he saw someone standing away from the crowd. He turned and saw a blurry Brenda. She was listening to the conversation. "I've got rollerblades in my backpack," Gabe said. He grinned slyly. "Unless maybe you're scared." Jerry, feeling Cinnamon's eyes on him, forced a laugh. "Scared? Haha, no way. But your skates wouldn't fit me. I've got big feet." "What size?" "A man's size, 7.5. "Same as me." Gabe threw his backpack off his shoulder and opened it. Jerry's knees were suddenly weak. What was he going to do now? How could he get out of this? Gabe handed Jerry the skates. "Here you go." Jerry's heart was slamming into his ribs. He felt lightheaded. He reached out and took the skates. Everyone stared at him. He knew he didn't have a choice. He would lose face if he didn't rollerblade down the hill. He had to do it, even if he was killed in the process. "Okay," it came out a whisper. Craig clapped. "Cool. This will be good. This'll be good," Robin said. Jerry sat down and put on the skates. He heard a cough and looked up to see Brenda edging nearer. She looked horrified. He stood up and stepped carefully to the very edge of the hill. He glanced back at Cinnamon, who looked very impressed. The guys also watched with great interest. Jerry took a big breath, knowing it might well be his last, and pushed off the edge of the hill. His knees bent slightly. He jerked to one side and the other. His arms began to flail wildly. Then a miraculous thing happened. Heading down the hill, he heard a voice in his head. It wasn't an angel's voice, but it was just as wonderful. He remembered reading a physics book he checked out of the library several months ago. A body is more stable when the center of gravity is lower, and there is a broad base of support. Jerry leaned forward slightly, bent his knees till he was squatting, and widened the distance between his feet. He zoomed down the hill, picking up speed as he tore along the sidewalk. He didn't fall. Faster and faster he sped. He was edging left. He couldn't control it. The wind blew his hair. His shirt flapped on his back. Zoom! He tore along at the left edge of the sidewalk. He started to wobble, out of control. He was at the bottom of the hill now and began to slow as his left foot skated off the sidewalk. He slammed into a tree and fell backwards on his butt in the grass. The world spun around him. His face hurt, his knees hurt, and his butt hurt. But that was okay. I didn't die, Jerry thought happily. He heard feet running down the sidewalk. He struggled to sit up. The kids surrounded him, slapping him on the back. He did it, Robin cried. What a great ride, Craig whooped. You handled it like a pro, Gabe said. Cinnamon knelt beside him and touched his cheek. You're going to have a black eye, Jerry. She smiled and gazed at him. Cool. Jerry smiled back at her because he knew, now, without a doubt, he was in.